what some would consider unthinkable. They've removed their lawn and filled their yard with plants. The story of the garden and the Gardners next on A Gardener's Diary.
And Gerald Benware have more in common than the same first name. They also love antiques and have a passion for gardening. After outgrowing their first garden, they decided to move to a smaller house with a larger yard. Although their garden is only 7 years old, it already has a lush cottage garden look. Gerald, you and Jerry have created a wonderful cottage-style garden, almost a country garden, but we're really in Atlanta.
Yes.
And here it is, late spring. We're almost to summer. We've got just a few more beautiful, cool mornings like this. But what's different about your garden is that it is right in the city, and you've got no lawn. You've eliminated all the lawn.
All the lawn.
And the traditional foundation plants, and instead you've created a cottage garden that's just overflowing. And it even has a name, Clover Cottage.
Clover Cottage.
Now, how did it get the name Clover Cottage?
Well, we found the shutters at an antique shop, and I decided we should call the house Clover Cottage.
That's great. And it's not a 4-leaf clover.
No, it's a 3-leaf clover. When we moved into this house, we decided that we would have absolutely no grass. We wanted as many flowers and shrubs and plants as we could get in the front and in the back. So we decided no grass, just plants, and pathways to stroll through the garden.
Everywhere I look, I can see that there are paths throughout the garden, and they're just, I never know what I'm going to discover. And daylilies are something you have quite a few of in the garden.
Yes, Jerry loves the daylilies, and so do I. This one is called Joan Senior. It's almost a white with just a hint of green.
I
right
love
in the
that
center.
chartreuse.
Yes.
So it comes out like that and it stays that soft color?
It stays the soft color, and it's a repeat bloomer also.
So you think about that, repeat bloomer, so you get a longer season of bloom. That is such a beautiful lily, and I love the climbing fern coming up through the lily. It's using the lily as a trellis with the backdrop again of that hydrangea that you've got throughout the garden.
That's autumn, sunset, and purple passion.
That purple passion, that I like the size, the stature of that daylily. It doesn't overwhelm me with big, bulky flowers and foliage, and those flowers look like velvet to me.
They do, and it will repeat.
So it'll continue to bloom throughout the summer. And the crepe myrtles provide you winter color and structure as well.
That's true. I always think you should be able to see through them and walk under them, but not whack the tops off completely. It gives them a more natural effect. I would call it a cottage garden, free form, plants that you love, just put them in wherever they look good, and ground covers, climbing plants, roses. I think it's a typical cottage garden.
I think of hydrangeas as one of the quintessential cottage garden plants.
Yes, very old-fashioned.
And this stand is just billowing over the way I like them.
Yes. Jerry and I planted this Nico Blue about 4 years ago. They were gallon containers, and there must be about 6 plants in here.
Gallon-sized plants?
Gallon.
And this is
this is the way they've grown in 4 years.
And Nico Blue is it's an old, tried and true cultivar of the macrophylla or the big mop head.
Yes.
But these are pale blue.
Yes, because of the soil. There's not as much acid in the soil, so you get the lighter color.
Now, in terms of how you treat these with their maintenance, what do you do to get hydrangeas to look like this?
Well, after the blossoms start to fade, we cut all the old ones off. I give it a little 10-10-10, and then we get another flush of color in late July, early August.
So you get a second bloom by deadheading the first one?
By deadheading the first ones. The ones you see here that are starting to fade, we'll just cut them off to about here.
And then later in the summer you get another...
You get another flush of color.
Well, they're a favorite of mine.
Mine too. Very old-fashioned.
See how Gerald Benware incorporates his knowledge of upholstery to create a tapestry of garden textures and colors when we return.
Gerald Benware grew up in New York and spent 27 years as a CPA before starting his own upholstery business. His passion for collecting antiques is extended beyond the house and into his garden, where some of his finds are creatively displayed. He has also built most of the garden structures that are elegantly incorporated into the design of the garden. What stands out about your front garden to me, well, besides this magnificent specimen as I look up through all the filtered light of the river birch, is the fact that this is your front garden, and I could do a 360-degree circle, and I'm surrounded by foliage, shrubs and trees and perennials, and lots of rich color combinations of plants that almost look as if it's fabric that's been woven together.
Well, as a matter of fact, I use fabric every day. I'm an upholsterer. So I can sort of visualize from the colors in the upholstery how they would blend together in a garden.
The two really are art forms in a way.
Interwoven into art form, yes.
And the Japanese painted fern, not only does that do really well here in the south in Zone 7, that's going to be hardy much further north.
Yes.
Pennsylvania, I've seen it growing quite happily. It's a great, of course, for a shady garden and for bringing color into a shady garden.
It's a good accent fern. You see the green part of the fern leaf, and if you notice, you can see the purple vein of the plant starting from the stem to the very tip.
That really sets off the silver and green.
It sets off the silver and green, right.
So you really don't play very much with flower color here. It's more about foliage and texture.
That's exactly right. Choosing colors is probably pretty easy because we both like working with colors. But in my business, of course, being in the upholstery business, I work with color all the time. And Gerald has worked with me in the past in the upholstery business, so he pretty much knows what he's doing with color also.
How big is the whole property?
It's just shy of an acre.
And you and Gerald maintain and plant the
Yes.
whole garden?
We planted the whole garden.
You're the gardeners, the designers, the maintainers?
Right, we're everything. We came to this property, it will be 8 years in November. Actually, we started our garden probably March or April of the following year. That was the first part of the garden, of course, was the front of the house. We hired a bobcat and just leveled everything in the front except for 2 trees, and then started our terracing, and then from there we just started to lay out our garden in a plot form. And from that point, then we graduated to the back of the house.
Nothing had been done to this property, I don't think, in about 20 years. It was just completely overgrown. There was a shed in the back that we didn't even know was there because it was completely covered with ivy. We started out with the main path which goes down to the garden shed, and we branched out from there.
We knew primarily what we wanted. We wanted to have it very lush and very full and as tropical as we could get it.
I have a real sense of discovery in your garden. Around every corner, I don't know if I'm going to find another wonderful little seating area that's hidden and a little patio with pots and plants. It's lush, but yet there are all these wonderful structures throughout the garden.
Little seating areas and little rest areas where you can sit and relax and have a glass of tea or read or whatever you want to do, sure.
Did you put the structures in first before you did all the plantings?
We did the structures first and then we did the planting around that.
And you've built the structures?
Built all of the structures, yes. We have.
And this is an interesting treatment here of this almost a little sort of a miniature arbor over that bench.
Yes, well, the brackets holding up the arbor at the top I found in a junk pile. In fact, I found 6 of them, so I've got 4 more to go. I've got 4 more structures I can build. I've been collecting antiques for probably maybe 40 years, or maybe a little longer. It all started when I was in college and happened to rent an upstairs apartment from a lady and a gentleman who collected antiques, and they got me interested in investing in antiques. And primarily that's what I do, is consider it as an investment, but also consider it as a hobby, because it does nothing but appreciate and value, and appreciate in more than one way.
Jerry, in your garden, which is about an acre?
About an acre.
You've got lots of gardens within gardens.
We do.
Lots of different themes, and in this grouping you've achieved that lush tropical feeling by using what are often ordinary houseplants.
Yes.
You've treated in a different way and turned them into a real garden feature. The rubber plant,
Right.
the schiflera,
Yes.
and the ferns, and the combination of the textures. Did you think about that when you were grouping them?
Exactly. Layers and textures of different colors and different varieties of plants just gives you a nice, lush, full feeling.
What was your inspiration to bring the houseplants out into the garden?
Well, we needed something that we could take in the wintertime and not have to worry that they're going to be, you know, frozen or destroyed by the weather. So we just take them in the greenhouse and bring them back out in the spring.
And this bathtub, tell me about this.
This is an old French bathtub that dates about 1830s to 1840. And this is before running water. So the servants in the house had to prepare the bath for the master, so he would fill it full of water, and then when the master was all soaked up, he would take another jar or vessel and hose him down or wash him down.
And you've turned it into a clever water feature.
Yes.
You've got
We
quite a
have
few.
7 water features.
7.
7.
When are you going to stop? You just...
When you're interested in gardening, do you ever stop? I don't think you ever stop. I mean, there's always something new.
Gerald Gunn has been replacing his hybrid tea roses with durable and low-maintenance ones, appropriately called the knockout rose. Take a look when we continue.
Gerald Gunn has a very different background from his partner, Gerald Benware. A native Atlantan, Gerald earned a degree in nursing and currently has a house cleaning service in Atlanta. He also helps Gerald with his upholstery business. But both men agree that their favorite place to be is in the garden. Gerald, we're literally standing in the middle of this lush, lush garden.
Ah,
And you've got roses with that beautiful, beautiful color, and this vitex. Not only is it beautiful, but it blooms in the summer.
yes,
The leaves and the flower spikes are fragrant
yes.
and easy to grow.
Very easy. We really whack it all the way back during the fall, and it grows this tall before the end of the summer.
And how long does that keep blooming for you?
It blooms until about the end of July, almost to August.
So you got a good couple months of bloom.
Yes.
And that's a lot in our hot, hot summer.
Yes, yes.
I think more and more, not only in the South where we have a lot of drought problems and restrictions with watering, we have to look for plants that are tough and durable and beautiful.
That's true.
And Vitex fits the bill because it is a drought-tolerant species that you can grow.
Yes, it is. And we don't have a irrigation system here, and it's very easy to take care of. And if it's mulched and get a little water during the summer, it does well.
And these roses are a nice complement with that bright, bright color. It actually looks almost like it's got some day glow effect
Yes, these are knockout roses, and they're very easy to grow. And you don't have to spray them or anything like that. You just have to keep them watered.
in it. So you don't get problems with black spot or powdery mildew?
No, none whatsoever.
And how about when the heat of the summer really kicks in?
They love it.
They love it?
Yes.
Okay. It encourages them
The more
to
the
knock
better.
you out with
Yes,
the
with the
flowers.
flowers.
And you'll get good bloom throughout the summer, or do they slow down a little and then pick back up?
You get blooms all summer. You just keep them deadheaded, and they keep coming back.
Well, you can't ask for more from
You
a
really
rose
couldn't.
than that.
You couldn't. I love roses. I love to do the containers. Jerry loves the hydrangeas and the daylilies. But I like to fertilize. That's one thing I like to do. I love to spray the plants, make sure all the bugs are off. I just spray them with a forceful water on to get the bugs off. I just like being outside in the garden.
Gerald, you've got fantastic combinations in pots as well as in the garden. This beautiful canna just shoots up there like a spotlight.
It's really unusual. I planted the bulbs 2 years ago, and just all of a sudden they came up, and I had completely forgotten that I had planted them.
Well, that must have been exciting.
It was. It was just the shock. And the color, I think, is just unbelievable, the red.
that red it's just a spotlight, and it picks up the potato vine in
Yes.
that pot, and then you jump over here to this. This almost looks like an octopus, this asparagus fern.
We've had this for about 4 years, and we usually winter it in the greenhouse.
What I notice about your containers is you really mix tender plants or almost house plants with hardy plants. You've got coleus and dusty miller, and then this perennial astilbe.
Astilbe, yes. That stays out all winter. Of course, it dies down and it comes back, and I love the color here. And the color with the coleus, I think, is really pretty. You see the green here, the green in this colea matched, and of course this color here, and the dusty miller is just the color to just pull it all together. And this I use for height.
I like that, and it's fun to have that different texture sort of coming out.
It sort of gives the patio a tropical feel.
You're right. It dresses up the patio, and it's instant color.
Instant color, yes.
And the backdrop with that evergreen clematis, it's really helps set off the...
Of course, it's taken over the greenhouse.
Now, what I want to know is, do you pick the pillows to go with the plants, or the plants to go with the pillows?
That's Jerry's department. Of course, the pillows do go with the plants. It just happened that way.
So as the upholsterer, does he put the pillows out first and then you do up the beautiful pots?
Well, I think I did the pots and then he did the pillows.
Okay.
That's what happened.
But containers are a really quick way to punch up the garden, add
That's
a lot
true.
of color.
The only thing about it, you really have to water them a lot. They need watering pretty much every day. I think the patio would be very plain without them.
It looks great.
Thank you. You can even plant roses in containers. Anybody starting out should be able to plant anything they want to plant as long as they keep it watered, give it the right amount of sun and fertilizer, and it'll grow. I love the container garden because it seems to be easier for me to put the dahlias in here because I can take care of them easier. And these are new this year. They're called Whittam.
Whittam.
Yes.
And I like
And
white flowers.
They're pure white. And of course, dahlias don't have much of a fragrance to them, but I think they're just beautiful.
They don't need it. Some
No.
flowers can get away with it.
Absolutely.
Now, in terms of growing dahlias in a pot, how would you treat them differently than if they're in the ground? What will you do in the wintertime?
The same as the ones in the ground. I mean, they
You just leave 'em outside?
Leave them outside.
Okay.
Because it really doesn't get cold enough here to hurt them.
Gerald Benware shows us a favorite fern that he uses to complement his hostas when we return.
Although Gerald Benware and Gerald Gunn generally agree on what should go where in their Atlanta garden, they are often still faced with a typical plant lover's dilemma.
Whenever I'm out with the truck, it just automatically pulls into a nursery. And sometimes I come home with a truckload of plants, and Gerald doesn't say anything. He just looks at me cross-eyed and says, you know, now where are we going to put all of this?
We are collectors. Furniture, porcelains, and plants. Even though I bring it home and I say, where am I going to put it, I always find a spot.
This is a very ornamental fern. I don't see this too often.
This is an East Indian holly fern, and it's a little bit temperamental with our zone area. It does die back in the wintertime, but then it just comes back out in the spring.
So it's root hardy, but the foliage dies back?
The foliage dies back, but it is root hardy, yes.
What I like about this fern is the midrib here with that it's that limey green chartreuse,
Right.
and it plays well with your different hostas.
Yes.
So really, with not too complex of a plant palette, you've got a lot of different hostas though, and a lot of different ferns. This fern adds a lot of punch, lights up this one corner here.
A little more texture than the other ferns, right? And a little more color.
What gives you the most pleasure about coming up with these combinations? When do you have that wow moment?
Always.
Always. Okay, that's good.
Well, there's so many advantages of gardening. I mean, you get all kind of exercise, and you get the fresh air, plus you get the beauty of your rewards from the garden.
It helps me to relax. Even if I'm tired when I get home, I find this burst of energy when I get out in the garden. Just makes me feel alive.